Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something absolutely crucial for high-stress entrepreneurs and leaders. We're going to talk about how to unlock your natural flow state to solve really complex problems and innovate on demand. You know, if you've ever felt like your absolute best breakthrough ideas just kind of hide from you right when the pressure is at its peak, well, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of inspiration and give you a practical, actionable blueprint to get it back.
So let's start with a super frustrating scenario that honestly nearly every busy professional encounters. Picture this. You sit down to solve a major problem, maybe design a new strategy or create something meaningful. The deadline's looming, your inbox is totally overflowing, and the pressure is on. And literally nothing happens. The harder you stare at the screen to force those ideas out, the more distant they seem to get, right? The self-doubt starts creeping in, and you end up asking yourself, what happened to my creativity? Well, I want to reassure you right now. Your creativity is not broken. You haven't lost your edge. From a clinical perspective, that creative capacity is just buried. It's buried beneath mental noise, emotional tension, and a whole lot of subconscious resistance. It is not gone. It's just temporarily harder to access.
Okay, here's our roadmap to get you there. Number 1, the myth of forced creativity. 2, triggers behind creative blocks. 3, the perfectionism trap. 4, subconscious processing during rest. 5, entering the flow state. And 6, training your creative mind. This entire agenda is designed to help shift your brain from that completely blocked state into a highly trainable, consistent flow.
All right, section 1, the myth of forced creativity. Stop waiting for ideas. We really need to completely debunk the concept that creativity is some uncontrollable, mysterious force.
Because there's this core myth out there, right? The myth that creativity is just a random burst of genius reserved exclusively for painters or musicians. But the reality? The reality is that creativity is simply creating the right conditions that allow ideas to appear so you can solve problems and actually innovate. Creativity isn't just about art. It's the ability to see possibilities, connect ideas, adapt, and communicate effectively. Entrepreneurs, leaders, teachers, literally everyone who wants to improve their business or their life relies on creative thinking. You absolutely do not have to wait for a lucky flash of inspiration. The most consistently creative people out there are simply the ones who figured out how to set up the conditions for ideas to naturally emerge.
Moving right along to section 2, triggers behind creative blocks. Why ideas disappear. Because if we aren't supposed to force creativity, why do our best ideas vanish right when we're under the most pressure?
You know, when people hit a block, they so often mistakenly assume they lack talent or intelligence. But in reality, the cause goes way deeper, and it usually stems from the specific triggers we have listed here. Think about it. When your mind is bogged down by information overload from back-to-back meetings, or the sheer mental fatigue of endless decision-making, these factors act like a giant padlock. They effectively shut down the brain's creative centers. Stress, overthinking, perfectionism, fear of judgment, they completely jam up your mental gears.
So what's happening is when your nervous system is overloaded by putting out the daily fires of running a business, it locks you into protection mode. And in protection mode, your brain is busy trying to avoid mistakes. That leaves absolutely no energy available for imagination. To innovate, you actually need to be in exploration mode. And innovation requires psychological safety to create the mental space necessary for original ideas. You just cannot thrive creatively when your nervous system feels pressured. You have to actively shift from protecting yourself to exploring possibilities.
Which brings us to section 3, the perfectionism trap. Overcoming perfectionism. This is arguably one of the absolute most toxic mental interferences that leaders face today.
That toxic belief is that every single idea must be brilliant right out of the gate. Perfectionism convinces you that your first concept must be the finished concept. But we all know great ideas usually begin as messy, imperfect ones. The first draft is almost never the final one. So, to beat this, try a really specific strategy like the brain dump. Just set a 5-minute timer where you are forced to write down every terrible idea you have without editing or judging yourself. The goal is not perfection. The goal is movement, because movement creates momentum, and that momentum is exactly what creates breakthroughs.
Let's slow things down a bit for section 4, subconscious processing during rest. The power of rest. Understanding this next concept is kind of like discovering the hidden engine of your daily innovation. Most people assume creativity only happens when you are consciously forcing your brain to work.
But just take a look at where our most powerful solutions actually appear. While taking a walk, driving, or, as we all definitely know, having that sudden, crazy epiphany right in the middle of a shower. This happens because your subconscious mind is stubbornly hacking away at your complex problems long after your conscious attention is logged off and shifted elsewhere. When you relax and actually step away from the desk, your mind becomes way more receptive. The connections just form naturally. And this is exactly why forcing creativity backfires so badly. Applying pressure restricts your access to these deeper subconscious resources. Physical rest and positive distraction, they aren't just breaks. They're actually key business strategies for high-level problem solving.
All right, Section 5, entering the flow state, inviting creativity. So, how do we intentionally harness these subconscious shower ideas without forcing them?
Psychologists define the flow state as complete absorption in activity, where time just seems to disappear, focus becomes completely effortless, and action feels smooth and intuitive. When you're in this state, your ability to solve complex business problems increases dramatically. It stops feeling like grueling, pulling teeth kind of work and starts feeling like intuitive action. But, and here's the huge catch for all the high achievers out there watching, this highly productive state cannot be forcefully commanded. It absolutely must be gently invited. And that's where these conditions come in: mental clarity, reduced distraction, emotional regulation, confidence, curiosity, and subconscious alignment. Now, these aren't just vague buzzwords. They require actionable steps to remove your subconscious resistance. For example, creating mental clarity by physically turning off your phone, or regulating your emotions through a quick 2-minute breathing exercise before a big strategy session. That naturally lowers your internal resistance. You know, when people say they easily access creativity, it's rarely because they're just inherently smarter or more talented. It's simply because they carry way less internal resistance, which allows their ideas to flow much more naturally. And finally, Section 6, training your creative mind. Actionable, trainable steps. This is exactly where we transition from theory to the concrete steps leaders can take to make this flow state a consistent, everyday reality.
Because remember, creativity is not a fixed trait. It's a state, and states can absolutely be trained. Here's how you build this into an actionable system. First up, guided subconscious work. Try ending your workday by just writing down one complex problem on a pad of paper, explicitly letting your brain process it overnight while you sleep. Second, relaxation techniques. Implement a simple 5-minute box breathing routine right before brainstorming to literally manually shift your nervous system out of that protection mode. And third, focused mental training. Practice daily mindfulness so you can catch and quiet that internal interference before it spirals out of control. Over time, as you practice these specific exercises, accessing flow completely stops feeling random. It literally becomes your default way of operating.
So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought today. As a leader, are you endlessly trying to manufacture your best ideas, or are you finally ready to allow them? Your breakthrough solutions, they aren't hiding from you, I promise. They're just waiting just beneath the stress and the overthinking. It is time to stop forcing, start aligning your subconscious, and really discover what your mind can truly achieve when you finally give it the space to flow. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will catch you next time.